Hi everyone again. We've come off a really interesting talk about designing for engagement, and we talked about immersive experience on the site and within the whole scope and spectrum of UX design. We felt that it was a very important topic to cater for mobile first design, especially app design in native. For that, I've wanted to bring in a case study of a casino that has been, since the days I remember of launch, pronounced itself as the king of mobile with good reason. So for that, I have Sophie who is the mobile growth lead for LeoVegas, and I have Maciej Ząbek. Did I get that right, Maciej?
Yep.
Who is the head of product design and UX for LeoVegas. Hi guys, how are you doing? Can you hear me well?
Good.
Very good.
Yeah.
So I wanted to take these 30 minutes and talk about the UX design, the nature of the UX design for mobile apps. So we always talk about the responsive design and the site and the flow and the acquisition and the funnels, right? We have a lot of conversation that rotate around the technology and the principles that we implement in designing our websites. But I wanted to introduce a conversation that revolves around the challenges that we face when designing an additional channel to the front end and to the site, and the process that we go through when developing this. There's a reason for that. Talking about mobile first, the news of mobile first isn't news at all. It's been mobile first for a tremendous amount of time now. Anecdotally, I held a big show at ICE. I had Google, hosted Google on a show. I think it was ICE 2016. Let me say 2017, just to be on the safe side. And at that point in time, two key guys from Google said, so we were talking 3 years ago, that for 2 years already, the 98% of all searches and contacts were mobile first, right? So use that in day-to-day. I don't have an idea, or I don't think that we as an industry have migrated to native app as much as we use browser mobile. And I'd like to open up our discussion topic with that question first and foremost. Is it worth building an app? Why undertake the process, and what can we expect from that scenario?
Yeah. Okay, I can start. So I would say, as always, it depends. I would say common sense would say that someone that made a user that made the effort to download your app has obviously a higher intent than someone that is simply visiting your website.
Yes.
And the fact that every time he's unlocking his device, he's going to see your brand icon, also reminding him that you're there and they should be using your product.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, developing an app and distributing it to the store doesn't necessarily guarantee it's a success. You need to make sure that your organization is ready to allocate the resources to make sure that you're building a product that is meeting your user experience, but also that you're setting the right strategy when it comes to making sure your product is being delivered, discovered, and also making sure that you're able to retain your most valuable users. So I would say the process we've been through at LeoVegas was first to get an understanding of how much our app revenues are contributing to the organization overall. And also, we've been digging a little bit deeper. So we looked at some metrics like the retention rate, and we saw that our app users had, in average, retention rate 200% higher than our mobile web users.
That's triple.
And also, they were making average 70% more deposits than our mobile web users.
Wow.
And all of this come on top of the fact that we've been positioning ourselves on the market as being mobile first and the king of mobile. So all in all, all those metrics was just confirming the fact that we needed to put more resources into building a better product and keep on growing it.
I think there is a sense of ownership. There's a sense of brand loyalty when I think it's I don't want to say emotional, but it's a integral part. There's a feeling to choosing to install an app, right? I believe it's a lot more personal than just browsing a site. I feel that. I feel
exactly.
sometimes. In fact, I'll tell you when I feel it, and I still haven't done it. Reddit. Every time I open a link on Reddit, it goes, do you want to open it in app or do you want, and I always choose browser. I still haven't allowed myself to go, so I have to install Reddit and it has to use, So I think there is that element that once you do choose to put an application onto your phone, there is a certain element of acceptance to brand loyalty, brand ownership, and kind of, I think, even a feeling of, okay, I'll open up my personal world to this particular entity, and probably I wouldn't be surprised at the figures that you're seeing. They're much higher than I expected, actually, but I'm confident that the figures that we're seeing stem partly down to that. So yeah, I think the answer is it's definitely worth building an app if we're looking at 200% retention rate. I stem from a casino ownership and casino operations, and I would murder for triple increase in my retention rates at any given point in time. Okay, so looking at those trends and accepting those trends, I'd really like to take a look at the challenges that you face. If we take a customer journey from a product UX design perspective, right? We look at acquisition channels, which through online, we have affiliates, we have paid media, we have the usual, all the media that generally land on our landing pages, on sites. Adding an entire channel to this ecosystem surely changes the way we look at customer flow from the acquisition perspective, engagement perspective, even probably the information we can collect on the customer from device, I imagine, and from various integrations. How does that, if we break down the customer journey, what do we look at when and need to assess when developing an app from a product perspective? Maciej, do you want to take that or?
All right. I think you mentioned something really important before. So your Reddit example. Mm-hmm. So having that kind of a reason for people to actually install the app. Mm-hmm. And as you mentioned, like the acquisition process is a bit different when it comes to apps. Mm-hmm. So being able to explain also and to showcase that first of all, coming up with something which actually is that added value for the app, but also then trying to explain that to the users, for them to understand that mm-hmm. downloading that app is actually worth it, not to have those moments where when you get the links from CRM, you choose to open it in the browser.
Yeah, in fact, at no point in time have I ever been prompted or thought of why do I ever need to open the app. In fact, I don't know whether there's benefits to that in this particular case. So that's a very good point.
So this was one of our discoveries also after we already decided that this is something interesting for us from the business perspective. Mm-hmm. So also how to come up with the strategy for the app. I'm talking about from the product perspective, not from the business mm-hmm. perspective. Talking about from the interface perspective and the user experience. So how to come up with something which actually gives that added value. Mm-hmm. And this is the funny thing is that actually Apple even pushed us a bit with their new regulations into that direction. So okay, we can't deliver the same experience we have on the website, right? This is required.
You are talking about the 4.2 update, right? And
yeah.
And I want to open that Pandora's box at the end of this. Fair enough.
Yeah, but I guess we will get into that.
Yeah. Right. So from product design, if I may extract and assess what I from product design, I think you've realized that taking a native approach in terms of how we design the funnels, how we design the user experience is necessary. So a very good point. I mean, I'll go back to Reddit. You're absolutely right. You know, why install an app? What are the benefits? I think even from the acquisition perspective and player engagement perspective, there must be a reason, and that has to be clear. If we take a look at the user journey, right? Let's take a look at customer acquisition, because that's sort of the first interaction. So I could talk blindfold about, you know, cool, affiliates, media, site, landing page, conversion from landing page to registration, right? Registration to deposit, where I have to actually engage that deposit page, right? We look at those metrics, very, very clear funnel. It doesn't matter if it's mobile browser or a browser, because it's the same browser, right? Where does that change? Where does that flow change if today I speak to my dev team and I say, right, I want this native, I want this a native app. What do I need to look out for in terms of deviation from the standard process that I'm accustomed to?
Well, first, definitely you need to get your mobile native stack right. You need to get the right tool in terms of measurement and attribution, because you know, apps don't have cookies, so you need to integrate a tracking SDK to be able to identify where the user is basically coming from.
You said tracking ACK?
Yes, a software development kit.
Okay, all right.
So this is like the first step to basically understand where your user is coming from. And this is particularly useful if you're running paid acquisition. So you are actually able to attribute the credit to your paid channels. Okay, so I'm sorry to interrupt you, especially because it's deep tech. This is quite interesting for me. And I think it's interesting for anyone that is aiming to, any business owner that's aiming to develop their casino into an native app, or a developer out there listening to this. So the tracking mechanisms, the standard tracking mechanisms that we track for websites don't actually apply on apps. We need different media tracking mechanisms? Correct. And they exist as frameworks, yeah? Yeah, so it's a matter of like integrated, as I mentioned, this SDK. So the way it works for mobile apps is that since there's no cookies, there's mainly two ways to attribute an install. The first one being through device ID matching. So, you know, the publisher will be sharing the IDFA or the Google ID with you. The second one being through fingerprinting attribution. So it's you know, a bunch of different data points that basically the mobile measurement partner is matching between the impression and the clicks and the install itself. Oh, wow. All right. So we're looking at the expansion of an entire acquisition channel as well. In fact, going back to my own mobile use, it is when my adverts push me into the App Store directly, rather than a landing page of the site. The funnel does change because I'm there to install. Once I install, is the registration and the whole shebang kind of in one package, because the app is there. The process of, I don't want to jump too much in compliance, but as we follow the customer journey, I'd like to sort of touch what connects to that. You know, if I were to install a normal app, I don't necessarily have the registration process, right? Is that true for casino play as well? Let's say I didn't register on LeoVegas, right? So I've seen the advert, it took me to the App Store, I download the app, so I am who I am, right? I use like, you know, my Apple ID or my Google sign-in. And from a regulatory compliance perspective, where do I stand now? Do I still have to go through the name, surname, email, the password, 15 different points of registration, or is that bypassed? How does that look like? Yeah, you still need to go through, you know, the registration sign-up process or login process as you would do normally on the websites. Obviously, you know, when it comes to legal in general, we need to, same as for the websites, we need to make sure that we're registering the consent to start, you know, tracking and collecting data on the users. And it needs obviously to be different from the one from your website, because your mobile native stack is probably very different from the one of your websites. So as soon as basically the user is opening your app, you need to make sure that you are registering the consent and storing the consent. All right. I mean, I hope that I'm right about this, but I'm hearing substantial deviation to the flow, but obviously similarity to the structure of the flow as well. So if my tech stack may be different, my coding may be different,
but the basic compliance rules apply. And the basic step 1, 2, 3, you know, like click, register, click, in this case, install, register, and then pay. And it's something that interested me. I've never managed to, at the time when I was operating the casino, it was early days of native and app. I've never managed to integrate the casino onto an pay with the App Store. How does that look like today? You know, I've spent tremendous amount of money on Clash of Clans, like insane. But that buying those purple drops, yeah. But that's just click, you know, $99.99, and it's one tap buy. Considering our compliance elements, I actually wish I had some restrictive Clash of Clans at the time. Considering our compliance regulation elements, how does that one-tap purchase get introduced into the normal deposit process? Does it?
Yeah, so I mean, I would say there are different ways you can approach it. A lot of operators are going for like a simple container, meaning they're just wrapping their website, distributing it through the App Store. And then, I mean, the user experience and the journey is exactly the same that what you would have on the website. And some other operators like us are deciding to tackle a more native approach. So, but not necessarily everything has to be native, right? You can have like your login being native or the gameplay experience being native, but you can still maintain, you know, load some web view and get like your deposits done through your website.
Does it pay to use the Apple Pay, for example, to deposit? Can I if I'm an Android user, but irrelevant. If I now install a LeoVegas app, right? And I don't want to put my credit card in. Google Play already has my credit card details. Can I actually just go deposit and use the Google Play payment solution? Or do I technically still go through your PSP integrations, but now the interface is designed in native? You understand what I'm trying to get at?
Yep.
Yeah, I think Maciej can answer this one.
Yeah, so of course, like you know, payment providers are super crucial for our business, right?
Yeah, of
and
course.
It depends on the market, and we have to be very flexible when it comes to payment providers. So what we decided to do, for example, is to have available all the payment methods that we already have on the website.
Entercash, whatever,
everything.
Yeah.
Everything, and using a hybrid solution for that, so basically embedded web views, but also like using the native app gives us an advantage of use the native optimized solutions, like for example Apple Pay or Google Play potentially.
Yeah, please continue. I have an interjection here soon, but I want you to finish first.
Yeah, so in a happy scenario, let's say you could sign up with Apple Apple account basically, and have your payment card actually already ready for use. Yeah.
So on Google, for me, that's one tap buy, the bane of my life, right? Because if I'm bored, I just go one tap, $99.99. One thing that the reason why I wanted to interject here is because I've spent so much money on Clash of Clans, I've actually investigated this. And my understanding is that the actual, so as I said, I'm an Android user, so I can't speak for Apple, but the Google Pay, Google Play, the deposit interface, their fees are astronomical. So as I was going back and forth, I believe, I don't want to misquote, so don't take my word for it, but they're 30% plus or 20% plus in fees. So considering as a gaming entity that we obviously don't collect deposits as a full purchase, right? So we, if we're lucky, we will hold 25 to 40%. We'll hold a quarter between all the money in and all the money out, right? We're going to hold a percentage of that. If we're, for the sake of the argument, holding a quarter of deposits as GGR, as revenue, then effectively our entire revenue is just handed over to Google if we are to use their services. Does it even make sense for casino operations to go down that route?
Well, to be honest, of course not. But we're talking about two different solutions. So what you're talking about is the in-app purchases.
Yes.
Which are heavily,
Taxed.
they cost a lot,
Yeah.
basically. Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's also an ability to use payment solutions from both Google and Apple. So Apple Pay,
I see.
Google Pay, and that's
Okay.
a different service.
Okay.
So basically, it works a bit like using your credit card, which is assigned to your
So
Google account.
it doesn't make commercial sense to go down the route of in-app purchases. Not necessarily because it's technologically inept, it's just simply too expensive for the nature of our industry to go down that route. But
Yeah, and also it's like the solution is designed for something else. So like buying, I don't know, additional
elixirs
subscription.
and Clash of Clans, yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, or like those virtual goods, stuff like that. So basically, taking into consideration how many transactions do we have during the gameplay, that would be, ridiculous.
Yeah, no, I can imagine that. All right, so that's clear, because one of the things I want to take a look at is that if I follow the user journey, the deposit, the moment of that first transaction, in our figures, in our commercial, aspect of the first time depositor, that new depositor, that is when we feel we actually captivated the customer. And I just want to understand the comparison of, actually that's if I may drill further on that question. If we look at the customer journey, usually the registration is registration. Did they come through free spins? A registration doesn't really count, right? It does, and of course we will take all of those registered, not funded pool of customers, and we're going to try and get them to fund it. But it's that first funding, that first deposit. Considering that we have something so personal like an app installation on a device, does our acquisition, the moment of acquisition, like the benchmark, if you will, does it shift prior to deposit? I guess what I'm asking is, would you consider the registration to deposit ratio on the site to be lower in nature than the app installation to purchase? You understand where I'm coming at?
Yeah. So, I mean, what you're saying is basically we should expect the conversion rates post-install to be higher on app than on website, right?
Yeah, I believe so. I believe so, considering that there's an installation of an app going on.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this falls back to the fact that usually those users have a higher intent. So there's definitely going to show higher engagement.
Of course. I mean, it all boils down to I think, effectively, native apps are worth producing because we pay a massive expense of any gaming company's marketing. Fact. This is factual. We spend tremendous amount of money acquiring customers. And a huge drop-off of those customers happens at the registration conversion, registration to deposit. We generally lose 50 to 60% of our registrations, right? I mean, just plugging that gap just makes the marketing expenditure multiples more beneficial, right?
Yeah.
Add to that, please.
Yeah, I mean, I would say also in general, and maybe that might come more surprising, but acquiring an app users isn't necessarily always more expensive than acquiring, getting an NDC from your website. And that comes also from the fact that when you run acquisition for an app, you can unlock channels that you don't have access for a website. If you think about the App Store, those are unique places those are unique distribution platforms where you can both get discovered organically, but also through paid acquisition. And there are a bunch of big publishers that have also put strong emphasis on building a solid tech product for app promotion. So this can be neglected. And this gives you additional inventory to basically be discovered.
Yeah, but that brings down your cost of acquisition, right? That makes customers even cheaper to acquire in terms of installation, would it not?
Well, there's always competition, obviously.
Yeah, of course, okay, yeah.
But yeah, it doesn't come at necessarily much more expensive. That's what I wanted.
No, very good. I mean, if I still had casinos, I'd be installing, I'd be building an app right now. Right. We've chatted a lot about sort of implication acquisition and customer journey. There's something that I want to tack on because we've had limited amount of time, and I could speak to you guys for hours, quite frankly, about this. When you're looking at app design comparative to site design, I'd like to take a look at the symbiosis of product, right? Your tech, your marketing, your product team, the communication and symbiosis of those teams when you're approaching building an entire parallel channel. And what does it take going back to 4.2, going back to 4.7, sort of those Apple guideline updates and Google guideline updates? What do we look out for when producing an app and delivering it to market?
Well, to be honest, there's this kind of dilemma of should you focus on being consistent with your web product and with your brand and all the guidelines that you established for years in our case, or should you focus on being relevant on the mobile platform and utilize all the advantages that you get from the OS and from the devices themselves? And we chose to actually try to balance it, but we decided to allow a bit more experimentation on the app side, because we see that as an opportunity to actually push our product forward. And that's why what you mentioned, that synergy between departments and also like even between designers working on different parts of a product is super important, because we can learn from each other. So use the knowledge that we already have in the company, but also use the newly acquired knowledge by experimenting with the apps. And this is what you can already see on live on the market when it comes to our apps, that we chose to experiment a bit more.
No, that's very insightful. That is very insightful, and I think that what you just explained is the right approach. I would take that as the right approach, because it is a unique medium, and it doesn't follow necessarily the patterns of pure web browsing. We do have only a few minutes left. Unfortunately, only half an hour on this conversation. I think we could spend a few hours chatting about this. I personally could. Deploying on an app store or a Google store, what do we expect? What can developers fear or not fear when getting to that place, right? Can you give me a little bit of insight what to expect when we're actually launching an app?
Yeah.
Sophie, you want to start with perspective?
I can start. Okay, so I mean, I would say looking at Google first, they definitely way more selective as per where you can distribute real money gaming app into the Play Store. So right now they only allow it. Sorry.
Geographically, they're very.
Geographically, exactly. Yeah, okay. So you can only distribute in 3 markets at the moment, even though you might hold a license for the country, you know, where they even allow, for example, AdWords, but they don't allow you to distribute your app on the Play Store. So obviously, we are hoping that they will open up more markets, but that could be a matter of months or even years before they do so.
Yeah, because am I correct in saying I think Android users are over 1 billion Android users versus about 500 million Apple users. So Android as itself has a much bigger market share. But what you're saying is to the casino industry, to the gaming industry, it's irrelevant because they don't really allow the countries, right? Distribution, all right?
Exactly. But I mean, I would say it's also very much depends where are your core markets. So, you know, they are in general, yes, Android has a much higher penetration. But if you look at markets where we are strong, like the Nordics, for example, iOS has a much stronger penetration. Okay. So, yeah.
Yeah, it depends where we're coming at. Okay, I understand.
Exactly. And yeah, I would say one of the Google requirements as well that we had to face is you also need to make sure that if you, for example, if you have just a wrapper, you know, a container for your app, you need to make sure that people that are downloading it from, let's say, the UK Play Store can also only access it from the UK markets, right? So even if your website is actually available on other markets like Sweden or Denmark, those users shouldn't be able to use your Play Store app. So there's like a couple of restrictions that you need to add on top of like the basics.
From Google perspective.
From the Google perspective, yes.
And
Yeah, I would say when it comes to the technology itself, they haven't been as picky as Apple has been over the past.
I was
I would
going
say
to
2
ask you,
years.
how does Apple compare to that?
So they're really expecting you to deliver, a significant higher user experience for your app, rather than
So
a
you
simple
can't
function of
really
your
wrap a
website.
site. You can't sort of go, this is my site, this is browser, package it, and just plug it on there.
So you used to be able to do it, but they've become a lot more picky when it comes to allowing this kind of product into the store. They want you to show that you actually make an effort to prove that you're worth being distributed into the App Store.
Okay, I see. So that's when you talk about a more native experience.
Exactly.
So they have to deliver. Oh, please, yeah.
Exactly. And, even they say clearly, simply adding a few native functionality like push notification or biometric logging isn't sufficient for them. They really want to see that you've put some effort and you've been thinking about the user experience in general.
So is that down to the tech stack you use and the language you use, or do you actually have to change the way your product looks like? Are we looking at cosmetic changes, usability changes, or the language we're coding as well? Or all of the above?
They never made it explicit that you had to build for iOS native language. They just say that it needs to be elevated compared to your website. So because they never gave us clear specification on what solution to adopt to be compliant with their new requirements, it's been a very long process of testing, getting rejected, learning and testing again. To the point that we now, I think we have quite a good understanding of what they're expecting, but still, it's always a challenge, and the review process isn't very transparent either. It can be quite inconsistent as well, and the feedback can be quite generic, which make it very challenging to build the product.
I guess the message for the developers out there is get ready for a lot of QA and some more QA. And before deployment, loop and loop and loop again with each and every update. Look, guys, our 30 minutes is up. I wish I had a lot more. I plan to speak about a lot more topics with you, but it's what we have spoken about was very engaging. I've enjoyed it very much. Thank you for your time, and thank you for joining us. Anyone looking, please do check out LeoVegas and how their application looks like. It's pretty cool. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for having us. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.